So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second wonderful day of Huddle Global, India's largest beachside startup event. And this is Marketing Madness. My name is Ajay S. Nair. I run a company called Fresh Mind Ideas. So today, it's my pleasure to welcome Sneha Rachel Mathew. She's an experienced professional with a background in strategy operations, currently working full-time at Google in Play Partnerships. Sneha has also been a Forte Fellow with Forte Foundation, and she also have much other roles. Without further ado, let me welcome Sneha Rachel Mathew, and the stage is all yours, Sneha. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hello, എല്ലാവർക്കും namaskaram. I'm very excited and grateful to be here today to talk about go-to-market strategies for consumer tech startups. But before I start, I just wanted to take a minute to introduce myself in 3 pictures. As you can see, the first picture, any guesses? Trivandrum, yes. So ഞാൻ തിരുവനന്തപുരത്തു നിന്നാണ്. ഇതാണ് വീട്, ജനിച്ചതും വളർന്നതും എല്ലാം തിരുവനന്തപുരത്തു നിന്നാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് എനിക്ക് this is extremely special and very interesting to be back here and contribute to Kerala's startup ecosystem in my own small way. The second is the Google office in New York. As mentioned in my introduction, that's where I work. I lead strategy for scaled play partnerships at Google. I also volunteer with ERA. It's a startup incubator in New York, and I spend some time helping think through business models, go-to-market strategies, things like that for early stage startups. And an introduction of me would not be complete without the last pick. Any guesses there? Sorry? No. You got me. No, that's the picture of the mother from Home Alone? Yes. So I'm also a mom to a 2-year-old toddler boy. He keeps me on my toes, and in the vein of bringing your authentic self to work, I think we all have to acknowledge that it's exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. I see some nodding heads, so parents in the room agreeing with me. So that's it about myself. Now we can start with the topic. The agenda is pretty simple. I just want to go through the basics of go-to-market strategy. What are the key components? And then spend a little bit of time talking through a few key examples, some interesting case studies that I've seen, mostly startups that you probably have all heard of, but interestingly, how did they launch, how did they pivot and become who they are today? And then finally, want to leave some time for Q&A. Does that make sense? Okay. Firstly, QB. Raise your hands if you have heard of this company. You have? Okay, nice. Do you want to share what it is, if you remember? Correct. Exactly. So QB is basically Netflix, but short form video content of 10, 15 minutes. The reason most of you probably haven't heard about this startup is because it launched in 2020 and shut down in 2020. It got an investment of about $1.8 billion in that time. There was a star-studded founding team of Meg Whitman down there, if you can see, and Jeffrey Katzenberg. Meg Whitman is the ex-CEO of HP. And Jeffrey is an all-time media and entertainment executive, Disney, and similar, like, very famous firms. So why did they not really work out? One of the reasons that they gave is because this was meant, this short form video was really meant for watching while commuting. And 2020, with pandemic hitting, short form, there was no commute. So that's one of the reasons that the founding team mentioned. But if you think about it, is it really true? A lot of other short form content surged during that time, right? Within social media, you had Reels, you have YouTube Shorts, all of that really picked up. So my belief is that if the team had a really honest and thorough go-to-market strategy, then this probably would not have happened. Or if they had failed, they would have realized sooner without incurring $1.8 billion in losses. So if you look here, I know the font is really small. So the top reasons for failure, I think most of you have seen this already many times, but the biggest reason is there is no market need, right? So was there a real need for another 10 to 15 minute original content short form video that really didn't, it didn't have any other purpose? So was there a really need? I think we must all question that. That's, I think, the biggest reason why we need a thorough go-to-market strategy, so that we can validate all of the different aspects, like what is the idea, who are you targeting, who is the target audience, what are their needs, fears, and what should your product experience be like, so that it makes sense for the target audience and your product will ultimately be used and you can scale up. So before we go into more details, I also want to address some myths about go-to-market. To my mind, it's a comprehensive plan to successfully bring your product or service to your target audience. There are a lot of myths around this, as if it's just a marketing strategy. You can just build your product or service and then you can think about it later. There is also no real standard playbook for this, right? What works in some cases may not necessarily work in other cases. And this is not something that you need to think about as an afterthought. It's something that you need to think about right at the beginning. When you start thinking about your idea, that's when you need to think about, how do I take this to the audience? Because if there is no market, there is no use of your product, right? So it's something that needs to be thought about right from the very beginning. So the first step is essentially problem discovery and validation. Are you really solving a problem with your idea? Is there a real need? How is that problem currently being solved today? What are some of the alternatives? Who's your competition? How are your target users currently addressing that problem, right? So all of these are questions that you need to thoroughly investigate before you can go and decide, okay, this idea makes sense. So there are a lot of ways to validate this. You can do regular desk research. You can get feedback from experts. You can do a lot of early adopter user interviews. And usually what you see is early adopters, if they are fans of your product, they are more than willing to give feedback. Because you may have noticed the curve of adoption. The early adopters are always like the innovators. They want to see new solutions come to market, and they're always honest and forthcoming with their feedback. So that's the group you need to really lean on to validate your idea from the get-go. So now you have a fair idea of what, and you think, okay, this idea probably works. There's some good initial feedback of the need for it. So you validated it to some extent, right? And then you need thinking about, okay, but how big is it? Like, how big is the opportunity? Is there, you know, if I build something, what's the scale to which it can grow? So that's where your market size comes into picture. And I think it's best explained with an example. So for example, Airbnb, right? The total addressable market of Airbnb is all the stays that are booked worldwide. But is Airbnb addressing all of that? No, right? So you think about what is their sub-segment, right? What is the sub-segment that Airbnb catered to when it launched? It's mostly budget stays and for all the target audience who's comfortable booking online, right? So that's your addressable market, and that's your SAM. And within that, how much market share do you capture? That's your serviceable, obtainable market. So it's essentially the market share as compared to SAM. These three terms are really important because it gives not just yourself, but also you know, the investor community that you talk to, other folks that you talk to understand what's the opportunity of the idea that's being discussed here, right? So that's the start. So market size is the start of the who, right? Who's your target audience? The market size is just the start of that. Then you need to think about what is the real value proposition. So you have your idea, and this is a value proposition canvas. You have your idea, and that product will have its benefits, you'll have its experience, and you'll have some features, right? These have to map to the needs, wants, and fears of your target audience. And when you iterate across both of these, that is when you will arrive at a clear idea of like what should the features be and the experience be of your product. And at the same time, who's your ideal customer? Who's your ideal target audience, right? So this helps you kind of capture that. So again, if you take the Airbnb example, who's your ideal customer profile? Ideal customer is generally a population who's on the younger side, who really likes to travel. Maybe they do 3 to 4 trips a year. They really like curating experiences. They're definitely concerned about budget. They're very comfortable making their trip, booking everything online. So this is your target audience. And that's your ICP. And if you think about ICP as like a group, there are different kinds of personas who constitute the ICP, right? For example, this is a sample persona of an Airbnb ideal customer profile, right? So this is Taylor. Taylor's 26 years old. She's a business analyst. She works in San Francisco. She really loves to travel. She wants to make sure that her pictures, when she makes the booking, they reflect the reality of the actual place that she's going to stay at. She likes to make choices based on maps, so she wants a map feature of like identifying where to book. She's not a fan of cancellations that happen last minute, and she wants to be protected against it, right? So that's the persona, and this is one persona of the ideal customer profile. But if you see, there are very clear wants, needs, and then when you dive deeper into the persona, you're able to understand how do you position your product to suit the persona. it's just easier to think of this as one person, right? A persona is almost like a group of personalities who are very similar. So that's ideal customer profile. You have your personas. So we're almost trying to answer who. So we've covered what, we've covered who. Then there are a bunch of other things that we need to think about, which is essentially competition, right? You need to understand what are the competitors doing, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and what are some of the strategies that they have taken up? And therefore, what is your unique positioning, right? How are you differentiating yourself as compared to the competition? And finally, there's nothing without pricing, right? You need to make money. And it's very linked to, so pricing is very linked to positioning. If you want to position yourself as the affordable option, as the budget option, then you may need to make sure that your pricing reflects that. And it's also tricky because at the end of the day, your pricing needs to also cover your costs, right? So every unit or like marginal product that you sell or like booking that you do in this case, that needs to make money. It may not make money at the start because there's always fixed costs that you have to cover. You need to get to a certain scale before you make money. That's okay. But what's most important is once you reach a certain threshold, beyond that, every unit that is sold needs to be profitable, like unit price positive. Right? So that's something, otherwise your business will never make money, and that won't work. So we've covered a lot of like the what, who, and all of like the associated topics, and all of this gets you to product market fit. I think there was a session here yesterday talking specifically about product market fit. So I won't go into much detail, but it's essentially an iteration of all of this, right? You get your audience, you identify the needs, you test your value proposition, you create a very basic prototype, and then you collect feedback. And you do it continuously till you achieve product market fit. And so there's Sean he's a product marketer at Dropbox. He analyzed a few different startups, and he found that the best indicator of identifying if you've really achieved product market fit is when you do your customer survey, and if you ask them, how would you feel without said product? Would you be somewhat disappointed? Would you be not disappointed? Or would you be very disappointed? And at least 40% of your audience have to answer very disappointed. That's basically the rule of thumb by which you can know that you've somewhat achieved product market fit, at least in that current scenario. Till you launch something else or till the market changes, right? Because this is a market like anything else, it's ever changing. So you cannot assume that anything will last for a very long time. But at least for the current product or service, you can determine if you've achieved product market fit when you get 40% of your customers saying, I would be very disappointed if this product is stopped or like doesn't exist tomorrow. So that's all the basics, and then we can think about different channels or different approaches of actually reaching your target audience, right? So there are a few different categorizations of it. It's not a rule. The startups mix and match different channels all the time, but generally, till you achieve product market fit or till you're ready to scale, most startups focus on inbound-led go-to-market which is essentially you have your website or you have your organic channels. You do as much search engine optimization as possible. You rely a lot on content marketing. So you use whether you can write blog posts, you can do social media. So whichever way you try to put as much content out there as possible to increase awareness. You can also reach out to influencers who have a captive audience and who may be relevant for the target audience that you're looking to land your product with, right? So you have influencers, you can run social campaigns, emails, blog posts, you can rely on press. I think there's another session on how to use press, right? So, or media. And then generally, any product or service, usually you can find a community out there. Maybe it's on Reddit, maybe it's on Quora, maybe it's on Facebook pages, right? So there's always a community, and you can start putting materials out there so that you get your early audiences who will try and give you feedback. So the benefit, or like the best part of inbound, is that it's very cost effective. It's as compared to paid media channels where there's a high CAC involved. This is very cost effective, but it's also unpredictable. You cannot really scale it very fast unless you really go viral with a campaign on social media. So there are some cons, but the cost really stands out, and therefore this is something that's used very, very early on. Then you think about demand generation. So demand, like I said, there is this categorization is just for the ease of explanation. It's not really a rule. So demand generation, and the way I define it, is basically all paid channels plus inbound, right? So all the inbound channels that we just discussed, plus paid marketing. It may be search, display, video ads. You can even go to TV, out of home. And in some cases, you also do referrals and, partnerships. So partnerships are also kind of not talked about as much, but I think it's one of the most cost-effective ways of getting your product to customers. There are definitely a lot of pros. So the first thing is, once you identify the right channel, and if you're able to tweak it to the extent that the conversion rate makes sense and its unit economics positive, usually you can scale really fast, right? So then there is no real limit and nothing stopping you from scaling, because you can buy as many ads as possible as long as your target audience is big enough, right? You can buy ads to target the personas that you've defined, and then it's quick scale. But it's also not easy to get that right fit with the channel, and that takes a little bit of time and testing, and usually the growth teams in the startups, that's what they're focused on. And also like conversion, sometimes it's good, sometimes it might not be that good. It depends on the channel again. But if you get it right, no end to how much you can scale. The final category I want to talk about is essentially product-led. This is where product becomes the be-all and end-all, right? And you've invested a lot of time and energy making sure that your product is super easy to access. There is no friction. You try to dangle a carrot, which is usually in the form of free trial or freemium or you do a little bit of gamifications, you can do referrals and say, if you refer X number of people, you can use X features on your product, right? So product-led is also becoming very popular these days, because again, that's not a lot of cost involved to go to market, but definitely making the product that good is the biggest investment. So those are all the different types of go-to-market channels that we see. Finally, go-to-market is not complete without talking about metrics. So you need to make sure that once you put your product or service out there, you are diligent and rigorous about measuring how it's performing, right? And there are a lot of typical metrics that are used, which is total cost of acquisition, lifetime value, average revenue per user. I think most of this you've seen. I've just given some examples just to stress the fact that it's very important to make sure that you're continuously measuring and improving the performance of your channels. And the best way to really operationalize go-to-market is by including it in the plan of your company, right? So when I started, I said the biggest myth is that this is just a marketing strategy. It can be handled by the marketing department. That's not true. Go-to-market is inculcated within the business plan. So most companies, they have an annual plan. They create OKRs, right? Objective key results. So making sure that you have this integrated into the plan is super important. An example I have here is if you want to boost your search engine optimization, what is the typical OKR that you'd create, right? So your objective is boost organic web traffic. What are the key results that you want? Increase number of monthly website visitors from 8,000 to 18,000, right? This is just an illustrative. And then you can say, I want to retain some of those users, right? So I want to reduce the bounce rate. I want to improve the website speed so that the user interaction is more seamless, right? So this is just an example of how do you integrate your go-to-market plan within your company plan. Well, so that's all the basics. Now we'll talk through some of the examples. Uber, everyone knows about Uber, right? But what's interesting is when Uber launched in San Francisco, and I think the story is both the founders, Travis and Camp, I think, I forget his name. They were in Paris. They were trying to get a cab. They were attending a tech conference like this. They couldn't get a cab, and it was overpriced. So the idea was born that they could, what if you could just call a cab through an app, right? So that's where the idea was born. And I believe they always thought about making it a marketplace. It's not a one-way service, right? So you have both the riders and the drivers, and Uber caters to both. Both are customers for Uber. Although that was always the plan, when they launched, they did not really have drivers sign up. They had luxury black cars with experienced drivers, dressed well, very clean cars, because they were smart. They knew that the fact that you can call a cab on your phone, that in itself is new. To make people trust to sit with a stranger in a car who's driving your car, that's going to be a little bit of a hurdle. So they wanted to make sure that their idea is successful. They started that's why I call it fake it till you make it, because they faked the first launch aspect of it, and then when they had very clear user needs identified, and Uber had become a hit with the riders, that's when they slowly started Uber X, and that's when you had your budget regular drivers coming up and picking. So instead of your luxury cars, they started going with the regular cars. So that's that. I think they were really smart about it. And in the other example, like I talked about Airbnb quite a bit. Airbnb was not that smart. So they really had to deal with the user fears, right? Of like going into a stranger's house and taking a room in that house. That's not something that people were used to. So they really had to like improvise and help with users overcoming that fear. And here they took another approach. Their most common, like the marketing channel that they used were referrals. So somebody downloads an app and they say, okay, you will get X% discount if you refer this X many people, right? So that referral campaign really caught on. And then they continue to give a lot of discounts. That's where all of the Silicon Valley money went in, because they were just funding a lot of discounts to capture market share and to make sure that the target audience become used to Uber as a concept, or ride hailing as a concept. Has anybody heard of Duolingo? Yes, right? Okay. So Duolingo, their target customer is mostly Gen Z, under the age of 30. If you think about their product, it's not really that different. I mean, they're a platform that offers free courses for language education, but there are a lot of other apps that have the same features. So why did Duolingo stand out? Because they really doubled down on their marketing campaign, the viral marketing campaign that they launched through social media. So they've got this owl, named it Duo, and then they started making viral TikTok videos, and that got really popular with Gen Z. They also did something else, which is somewhere it's frowned upon, but it worked for them, so I'm nobody to say that it's wrong. So they have a lot of guilt trip push notifications to, it's a number of days, nobody will, can you get out and like start learning, right? So I have an example here. It's time for your daily lesson, take 5 minutes to complete it. It's Duo, make your screen time count, take your Japanese lesson now, right? So they have a lot of those guilt trip notifications, and they say that it worked. It looks like it worked. No, nobody can say how much of the popularity was contributed by the viral campaign, or how much was contributed by the guilt notifications. But they are, one of the most popular language learning apps today. Misho, again, everybody knows. I think there's a story of Pivot here as well, where Vidit, I was watching one of the videos where the CEO, Vidit, was talking about how they started. And I think they went through a lot of iterations till they achieved product market fit. They initially went to all the Kirana stores, the mom and pop stores, and they wanted to get them online. But they didn't really understand what is it that will click with their target audience, or who is the target audience. And for them, they went through a few iterations till they found that there are a lot of women in tier 2, tier 3 cities who are looking for an income of their own, who really have an entrepreneurial spirit. They may have, a kurta boutique in their house where they, try and sell it within their community. So they found that this target audience is really untapped, and that's what they focused on. So they really made them feel empowered, right? So they're like, not just a homemaker, you're a Misho entrepreneur. And the women get, X amount of income, and they also interestingly they use ads, they've used TV ads, they clearly have Ranveer and Deepika here and a lot of actors across the nation. But the target audience also does a lot to promote their products, because they do WhatsApp promotion to their immediate target audience, right? So if I'm a woman who has a kurta boutique shop, I have my set of customers, and I know who they are. And I just if a new product or a new line comes in, I just send it through WhatsApp, and they have that information, right? So that's so they also leaned in on their sellers or resellers to spread the word as well. Robinhood, so this is a very popular trading platform in the US. It's basically a zero commission platform. No charges whatsoever. You can do all the basic trades as much as you want. This is where you have a freemium model. So if you need to do derivatives or other trades that are not the regular share buying, then you need to pay for it. If you need to short, etc., then you need to pay. But if you're just buying stocks, fractional stocks, none of that needs to be expensed, right? So Robinhood started with that, and their whole idea was, we want to democratize trading. And their target audience was not the people who already had trading accounts with banks or other trading firms who already were willing to pay some money. They wanted to target those other people who have disposable income to invest, but they weren't already on a trading platform because they probably weren't familiar with it. There's a lot of inhibition. So this was just a very super good user interface, very easy to just log in and start doing your trades. And also the whole idea, we want to democratize and make sure that everyone has access to the service, right? And their name, Robinhood, really caught up as well. Which essentially is the character in the story who robbed the rich and gave it to the poor. So so that's Robinhood. They did have a referral program in the beginning, and I think they had almost 1 million signups much before they even launched the product. How they did it was, they'd say, okay, you'll get early access. The more referrals you make, the higher your name will be in the list of people who gets access. So again, sorry about the small font, but it basically says, thank you, we've added your email address to the sign-up queue. There are 354,000 people ahead of you. And they said, if you're interested in priority access, you can get early access by referring more friends, right? So that's a very, very natural, smart way of gamifying referrals. And yeah, they had 1 million signups before they launched. So even just a segue there, for raising money as well, right? For investors, just knowing that you have X number of people who really are vying to use your product, that's super powerful, right? They investors really die for that, right? So if you're able to prove that you have X number of people waiting to use your product even before launch, then you can kind of say that your investors will be more bought in. Physics Wala, again, I think a lot of people are familiar with. Their strategy was interesting because I don't think the CEO here, he's thought about starting an app. I think he just wanted to, he had a passion for teaching. He started with a YouTube channel, and that passion showed. A lot of students signed up. And when some of the students did really well, other students were like, oh, how are you learning this concept? How did you get this answer right? And then, the answer was, oh, I follow this YouTube channel, right? So before they started their app or like their actual formal service, they had a lot of captive audience as part of their YouTube channel. So they really used that and leveraged that to then, convert them into paying for some of the courses. But still, they really, their positioning is still quite affordable as compared to any other education platform out there. They really want to, again, democratize, right? And make sure that any kid who wants to learn has the opportunity to do that without having to pay a lot of fees. Finally, better.com. Has anybody in the audience heard of this firm? It's my old employer. So I was, before Google, I worked there as the director of strategy and operations. This one is a mixed bag. It had a lot of success. When I joined, it was in 2020. They were a very small company, but as pandemic hit, the interest rates became really low. And they had a product which was very easy to use. Just go online, and so refinance is a very common concept in the US, where you have a home loan, but if the rates go down, you can refinance it for a lower rate, right? So you don't have to pay the high interest rate. So they really met success with the refinance market in the low interest rate environment. It was also interesting because even though interest rates were low, customers didn't want to go to the banks for fear of catching COVID, right? And the banks, they had all shut down their branches. So they really reaped the benefit of COVID, low interest rates, different example compared to QB and the impact of COVID there, right? But as soon as the interest rates started going up, they lost, almost all the volume that they had made. They lost the business, the deal flow. All of that came drastically down. I think they were like at least maybe 10% of the size that they were. So this is just an example of getting product market fit right once may not mean that you will get it right all the time, because like I said, market is ever changing. As the interest rate market changed, the management didn't realize how they were not prepared for the purchase market, which is essentially homeowners buying a new home. This target audience is different from your refinance audience, because this audience is potentially first-time home buyers. They want to talk to somebody because this is the biggest purchase of their life, right? Instead of the folks who had already done a purchase and were looking to do a refinance. So there's a lot of difference in the target audience and the needs, and they weren't set up for that. So they lost their market share. There was a lot of upheaval. They were in the news for a lot of the wrong reasons later as well. But I think they learned a lot, and I believe they're trying to pivot, and the verdict is yet to come. So we'll know in a few years, I guess. So I think that's it. Those are the examples that I had. Um, to, to just conclude, if there's one message I want to leave with the crowd, it's go-to-market is not marketing strategy. It's something that needs to be inculcated within your business plan. It needs to continuously be iterated upon because your market changes, your product changes, your competitors change, and you can never take it for granted that if you got it right once, you will get it right again. And you need to be really rigorous, right? The rigor, that's what really determines success. How rigorous are you about understanding if your product or service and the experience that it provides is beneficial and serving the needs of your target audience at any point of time? So that's I think, the most important bit. So that's all from me. I don't know how much time we have. I lost track of time. So we can, 15, okay. Well, right on time. So yeah, so open to Q&A.
42% of startups are failing because of wrong time launch. So what is the right time to launch a product? Because everybody is looking to launch their product immediately and take the advantage of first comer advantage from the market. So what is the right time to launch a product?
Well, I don't think I have a perfect answer in terms of what is the right time. I think the right time depends, right? But I would go back to the product market fit slide, where if you feel like at your MVP or prototype stage, you are able to get at least 40% of your customers to say that, I would die for this product, or I really want this product, then I would say that that is the right time to scale. But till you achieve that, it's difficult to do that. That's generally my 2 cents.
My question is around how do you identify the market size? So for a startup like us, we don't have a lot of funds to invest in the market study, right? So is there any good ways to identify the TAM, SAM, and so on?
What could you give me the example of your area?
Okay, so we are into event ticketing, so that's where we want to be there.
Yeah, so generally a lot of, this is me using my consulting brain, right? So there are, most industries, if you look at, they have, whether it's CB Insights, there are a lot of firms that do studies, that do market reports. So you don't necessarily need to commission one of your own. You can leverage what exists out there. So it's just as simple as doing a lot of desk research to find, event market size, and you can do a quick hack, event market size PDF, right? So you typically will get some reports. That's one way to look at it. There's also a lot of websites like Statista that's out there that usually has a lot of information about the sizes of different industries, different segments, sectors, things like that. Now, when you think about events, obviously there's the TAM, and then you have to think about what is your product and what's the sub-segment within events that your product is catering to, right? And that's the work that you'll have to do on your own, because you'll not really get that anywhere. But TAM, you will still find a lot of reports, especially for something like events.
Yeah, so my question is like, if you consider a company like Airbnb, so they have customers who are trying to book a stay, and like they have homestay owners as well. So if we consider a platform like that, we have a problem like who should we first onboard into the platform, so that like let's say homestay owners think that the participant should be there so that we will onboard into that, and the customers are thinking like they like since stays are not there properly, we will not onboard. So how do we solve this problem?
Yeah, that's the classic chicken and egg situation, right? And I think that's where you have to take a leaf from the Uber example, where they had a similar marketplace situation, but they solved for one side of the marketplace, where there is probably, which was the most important, right, is to get people to start calling cabs on an app. So if is homestay, is that your product? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I would say focus on making sure that the experience makes sense for one side of your users, and whatever fears, needs, wants that they have, as much as possible, you'll have to try and control for it. And whichever side you think is most important, right? And then you can spend time. It's very difficult to do both simultaneously. It's a classic chicken and egg problem. Otherwise, everybody would do it, right? So it's, yeah, so that's.
Hi, Sneha. Thank you. It was a great session. My question is related to the pricing strategy. One of the USPs of our product is a pricing, a 50% reduction from the competition landscape. But I always think about whether is it going to consumed by the customers as if an inferior product, where there are apples in the market where they price for a higher pricing. So what is your take on the pricing strategy when it comes to one of the USPs as a low price or a competitive price?
Yeah, I mean, Apple is a little bit of an exception. Their whole strategy is also a little bit of an exception. But again, it depends on your target audience, right? And your positioning. What is it? If you want to be positioned as the budget or the more affordable option, then it makes sense. There are other ways of controlling for quality, or like the perception of quality, right? Either you can have content out there about trying to address the quality concern, right? You can share reviews. You can talk about some of the whatever their fear is about quality. You can address it slightly differently. But if your positioning is your positioning that fits the target audience is that it's affordable, then you should continue to do that. But at the same time, you need to make sure that from a unit cost perspective, it makes sense, because for every marginal sale that you do, it needs to be positive. So that's very important.
Hi, Sneha. It's a great presentation, very crisp and clean. My question is, what would be the average cost for an employer has to bear to make his product into product-led margin, product-led growth, I can say?
I don't have an answer to that, because I mean it really depends. Usually, what I've seen is, especially in the early stage startups that I advise, there are typically only two people, right? There is the tech person, and there is the CEO kind of person who can talk, right? Or strategize. So, and mostly they kind of do a lot of the work on their own, right? Till they are able to get initial set of customers. So that then is not a lot of investment, but that's when you start looking for like seed rounds, right? That's when you can go to an accelerator or an incubator or somewhere here and like say, okay, we have this, this is our business plan, this is how we want to experiment further. So, and X amount is the seed amount required to do that, right? So I have an answer to how to get it. I don't have an answer of like what exactly will it cost, because it varies a lot depending on the market that you're in, depending on the product that you're trying to build.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Jay. I'm work in data analytics as a consultant, but I'm also learning marketing, right? One of the questions I have for you, piggyback on what you just said, an early stage startup like with 2 people or 3 people, they can, get into a room, discuss, and figure out what to do. But once the startup starts growing and then you have customers, their life gets busier. They might think about bringing in a third person just to do the marketing side, who may not have the same perspective, right? So in that sort of a growth stage, who should ideally be doing the GTM? I mean, does it make sense to hire a specialist or the core team? And well, let's say once the company becomes 20, 30, 50,
Yeah.
does it make sense to take input from people at the bottom of the pyramid as well? What is your perspective?
Yeah, I think there are a few different questions bundled into your question. So let me try and answer the first one, which is, do you bring a third person in, right? So my bias is that the strategy of GTM has to be owned by the co-founders till you achieve product market fit. It has to be owned by the co-founders. You can get people who understand how to test channels, for example, right? Or like, how do you make different types of copies and see which one's working better or not? How do you create content? You can get help there, but the basics of it, the understanding who's the target audience, how do you position it, what is my pricing, what's my unique value, is it working for the target customers or not, that has to still be owned by the co-founders, because that's where real ownership is, right? But as you scale, obviously, like different teams grow, things like that. What was the second part of your question?
Like when you have probably a larger team, right?
Yeah.
Including people at the bottom of
Yes.
the
So
pyramid.
yes. So that's. I think the biggest mistake a lot of CEOs, not really at initial stage, but what they make is as the company grows, they lose touch with what's happening on the ground. And the best people to tell you about what's happening on the ground is the people who interact with your customers day to day, right? So they have the pulse, maybe even better than you, and they can tell you the reality. Like, our product didn't sell because this other competitor had this feature and ours is not that good, right? That's the reality. And you need to enable them to be able to share that with the founding team, so that then they can make the decision, right? They can go to the product or like the CTO and say, okay, we have this issue, let's try and resolve it. So again, that's where the rigor of staying in touch with the pulse of your target audience or the customer is super important. And one way to do that is to talk to your company, like the folks who actually deal with the customers.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jyotis Joseph.
Ah.
I'm co-founder of Yellow. So my question is about the pricing strategy. Um, is there any specific thumb rule to decide whether our GTM strategy is a sales-driven or the marketing-driven? Is there any thumb rule on the exact pricing of the product, where to go with the sales-driven or marketing-driven?
Yeah, I think this is also dependent on whether it's a B2B versus B2C product. What is yours?
Mine is a talent marketplace. It's a marketplace.
Okay, and who's your target audience?
It's businesses.
So it's more B2B, right? Yeah, so there you have a little bit more leeway because you're is this like a recruiting solution?
Yeah, it's a platform to get a pre-vetted pool of technology talent immediately, maybe within few days, not
Okay.
versus the traditional recruitment cycle of 60 to 90 days.
Right. Yeah, so that is a little bit, there's more leeway to your pricing. Although what's important to think about is how much value is it offering your recruiters. One way I think about it is how much time is it saving your recruiters for sourcing leads, right? So that's the efficiency that you're adding. And that's at least the minimum that you can price. So you can easily calculate that, think about the hours saved, number of recruiters, that's the amount that you can easily price to. But at the same time, you need to make sure that it makes sense for your costs, right? Your product costs, everything else that's associated with it. So so it's not a one answer, right? You need to think about what's the value. Therefore, you can think about price. You can need to think about what's the cost. Therefore, you can get informed with the price. And finally, you need to think about who else is offering similar solutions, right? And what's the additional value that I have over them, and therefore, how do I price competitively? Usually, to start off, it's best to be as affordable as possible till you feel like you have achieved a certain leverage and there is real pull from the market for your product, right? And that's when you can think about additional margins. But to start with, I'd think about like, what's the bare minimum that I need to make sure we survive?
Hello, Neha.
Hi.
It was nice to be here. So, my question is like, I'm representing a startup. So we have a product. So we actually took little time to get into market fit, and still we are in the process. So we are really focusing into the product. So as this happened, like, is it a good mindset to get into market quick, as we took little time in getting to product market fit? So is it a good mindset, like we are thinking like we have to get the product as quick as possible into the market? So if so, like what are the elements we have to focus on the GTM, and like is it we have to get into a process like we have to focus inbound, slowly we have to get into outbound? So what's that like that hack?
What's your product about?
Actually, we are into a relationship app. It's a platform for building relationship. So especially we are focusing on divorce, widow, separated.
Okay, so like dating.
Yeah,
Okay.
But like it's more of a relationship building app.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so how much time have you spent with PMF?
Actually, we took almost 3 years for a product,
Okay.
including ideation.
Okay, yeah. So this is again where I want to talk about the experience with Better, right? One thing they did wrong was to prematurely scale to one group of customers. So I am biased to be always be cautious, right? So even if you've achieved PMF, I'd start with experimenting. Inbound you can do any point of time. You should continue to do inbound because it takes a lot of time to get your traction and on get awareness. But for outbound, because every ad that you buy, it costs, right? And you need to start a little small with testing out channels. And again, it depends on how much money you have as investment, right? That you can spend on cost of acquisition. So, and finally, you need to think about your lifetime value as well. I think there's a rule of thumb of 3. So that's interesting to think about. Yes, I'd say test channels one by one and try to optimize at least one channel and then focus on that, because it takes time to figure out what channels make sense. In this case, you can also think about what communities make sense to, because you can post on Quora, because a lot of people visit these sites to read up. So you can use different communities, Facebook pages, things like that, to get your word out there as much as possible. And then if you want to do social media targeting, for example, you can start, but it's usually very expensive. So till you fine tune it, don't really launch. Yeah.
Right. Sneha, I have a question. So since you work with Google, so you might be using some tools, right? You have any recommendations, in terms of the tools that you suggest? And also, now it's the AI time. So you have any suggestions to automate things, and any AIs that you are using? Can you please share
Yeah.
that?
Google is strange because Google has internal tools for everything. So, and sometimes they really like those internal tools, and it comes out but they don't have anything CRM that's similar to a CRM. So I don't really have a recommendation of a tool. All I can say is, and I've researched this a little bit, the main thing about AI is going to help with personalization quite a lot. And that's something that will really change your conversion, right? Targeting conversion. So the question that you were asking about scaling, Facebook ads became really bad in terms of performance when the cookie tracking, that had to be stopped. So their performance became really bad. But now they're using AI to really work on it. But in terms of tools, the most common answer is Salesforce, right? But that's more enterprise. There's HubSpot. There are a few other smaller players. It again depends on how much you have to.
Like the Microsoft Clarity and such tools you can use for tracking.
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's from another brand. So
Yeah.
I'm asking, like, in Google, you have anything, or are you...
It's all internal. Yeah, it's all internal
Thank you.
tools.
Any more questions? I think Malayalatile questions എടുക്കാൻ തോന്നുന്നല്ലേ?
Oh yes, Malayalam.
You can even ask in Malayalam. Like, she's from Trivandrum only. Like, ആർക്കെങ്കിലും questions ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ we can ask in Malayalam also.
മലയാളത്തിൽ ആർക്കും സംസാരിക്കണ്ട.
I thought more hands will raise, but yeah, it's okay.
ഹിന്ദിയിൽ ആർക്കെങ്കിലും സംസാരിക്കണം, ഹിന്ദിയിൽ
Can you also give some idea about what you do at Google, because you mentioned about Play partnerships. So
Yes,
can you give
yes.
some idea about that?
Yeah, I mean, so if you have apps in Play Store and you have trouble launching, don't come to me, because I cannot really help. Although I'll try to explain my job. It's a little complicated to explain. I've tried explaining to other people, and they're like, okay, because that's how Google is very fine-tuned. They're so big, so they try to really hone in on every specific aspect. So, everyone's familiar with Play Store, right? So Play Store has really big apps and games, and then they have what we call torso apps and games, which are not really that big. Like, for example, Physics Wala is a torso app. So there are a few there's certain services that Google provides to the bigger apps and games, and my job is to figure out how to scale that to the torso apps and games. Does that make sense? Slightly complicated, but that's the best I can.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you so much. And I believe you are not in Google. There's a policy that you shouldn't use ChatGPT. Instead, you should use Bard.
Bard,
or-
yes.
Is that true?
I mean, we have internally.
I have heard that there's
Yeah.
a policy that you shouldn't use ChatGPT. You
I
should
don't
use
know if
Bard.
it's a policy, but like we have Bard and other AI tools. Like there's something called dog fooding, so you can start experimenting. So for example, like we have different tools that are associated with like Google Docs. So you don't necessarily need to use another tool because it's
Even
all
you will have
embedded.
a limitation using Bing also.
Sorry.
Bing also you will have a limitation using.
Why would I use it? Why would I use Bing? I mean,
So that is typical
why would I
Google,
use
typical Google employee.
Why would anybody use Bing? I mean, come on.
Good. So yeah, so that is Sneha. Sneha, thank you so much for giving all the value, and we really appreciate you coming down and doing all the session. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions. Give her a loud round of applause.
Thank you.
We
Thank
have
you
a
so
small gift from Kerala Startup Mission as a token of love.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you. Once again, thank you so much to everyone for being patient with me and for all your wonderful questions. If anybody has any other questions, I'll be around for the rest of the day, and you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm really passionate about helping entrepreneurs, especially Malayali, Kerala. So don't think twice before reaching out to me. Thank you.